The conference room fell silent as the holographic display flickered to life. Ambassador Velthar stood before the assembled representatives, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he processed the data. The numbers floating in the air told a story that every species in the Galactic Concordance understood. Failure. The ancient station will collapse into the singularity in 72 hours, Velthar announced, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into common language. The Codex has completed its analysis. Captain Deho sat in the back row, arms crossed over his chest. He watched as species after species leaned forward to study the probability calculations. The Codex was never wrong. It was the most advanced computational network in the galaxy, built by civilizations long dead, maintained by the combined knowledge of 1,000 worlds. The hologram shifted, showing a massive structure suspended at the edge of a swirling darkness. The Void Nebula had been avoided for centuries. Space itself broke down there. Ships that entered rarely returned, and those that did brought back crews driven mad by what they had witnessed. The station contains technology from the predecessors, Velthar continued, artifacts that predate all known civilizations. The knowledge contained within could advance our understanding by millennia. He paused, his mandibles clicking nervously. However, the Codex has calculated the probability of successful retrieval and return. The number appeared above the station's image. 0.0001%. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. The Thalixian representative stood, her crystalline body refracting the light. That is not a mission. That is suicide. Agreed, said the Vorian commander, his tentacles curling in distaste. The Codex does not make errors. This percentage accounts for all variables, all possible approaches. It is impossible, Velthar nodded slowly. The Concordance will not order any crew to undertake this mission. We must accept that the station and its secrets will be lost. I'll go. Every head turned toward the back of the room. Deho stood, his simple human frame dwarfed by the massive aliens around him. He walked down the aisle, his boots clicking on the metal floor. Velthar's translator sputtered for a moment. Captain Deho, perhaps you did not understand the data. The chance of success is, I heard you, 0.00001%. Deho reached the front of the room and studied the hologram. Not zero. The difference is meaningless, the Thalixian said. It might as well be zero. Deho turned to face the room. But it's not. Zero means impossible. This number means possible. Just really, really difficult. He smiled slightly. Humans are good at difficult. Velthar's four eyes blinked in confusion. Captain, I must speak plainly. Your species is new to the Concordance. You have not yet learned to trust the Codex. It has guided our decisions for 10,000 years. When it says a mission cannot succeed, we listen. And that's why you need us, Deho said. He pointed at the hologram. You see those numbers and you stop thinking. We see them and start working. This is not work, the Vorian commander shouted. This is madness. You will die in the Void Nebula, and the Concordance will lose a ship and crew for nothing. Deho walked closer to the hologram, studying the station's structure. Maybe, but maybe not. The Codex calculated based on what's logical, right? Standard approach, standard tactics, standard thinking. He looked back at Velthar. Humans aren't always logical. That is precisely the concern, Velthar said quietly. 3 days ago, you asked me why humans keep volunteering for dangerous missions, Deho said. You wanted to understand our psychology. Remember? Velthar nodded slowly. This is your answer. The Codex computed a near zero chance of success. You see that and think it's over. Deho tapped his chest. We see that and feel something you don't have a word for in your language. We call it hope. The room erupted in confused chatter. Velthar raised one appendage for silence. Hope? I have studied human languages. Hope is belief in a positive outcome despite evidence? Close enough, Deho said. It's knowing the odds are against you and trying anyway. It's the thing that makes us attempt the impossible. That is illogical, the Thalixian stated flatly. Yeah, probably. Deho grinned. But we're still going. Velthar was quiet for a long moment. His translator worked overtime as he communicated with the Codex directly, his eyes glazing over as data streamed into his mind. Finally, he focused back on Deho. The Codex wishes to know what variable in its calculation did it miss. What factor would change this probability? Deho thought about it. He remembered the colony wars 15 years ago. He had been a young pilot then, trapped behind enemy lines with no fuel and no weapons. The Codex had given him a 0% chance of survival. He had made it home anyway. Will, Deho said finally. The Codex can calculate ship speeds, fuel efficiency, weapon ranges, structural integrity. It can process 1 billion variables in a second, but it can't calculate how badly someone wants to live. It can't measure determination. And it definitely can't measure hope. These are not variables, Velthar protested. They are emotions. They do not change physical reality, don't they? Deho asked. When I'm about to give up but I push harder instead, haven't I changed reality? When I find a solution because I refuse to accept there wasn't one, haven't I changed the outcome? Velthar had no answer. Deho turned to leave, then stopped. I need to gather my crew. We launch in 6 hours. Your crew? The Vorian commander asked. Who else is foolish enough to join this suicide mission? My sister Mirai, best pilot in the fleet. Borum, an engineer who can fix anything. And about 8 others who understand that sometimes the right thing to do is the impossible thing. Deho headed for the door. We'll bring back your predecessor technology. And when we do, maybe the Codex will learn something new. Captain, Velthar called out, if you survive this, I wish to understand this hope of yours better. When I get back, Deho promised, I'll teach you. As the door closed behind him, Velthar turned back to the hologram. The probability still glowed there, 0.01%. In 10,000 years, the Concordance had never attempted a mission with odds this poor. But in 10,000 years, the Concordance had never had humans. Velthar connected to the Codex again. Create a new file, he instructed. Title, Human Irrationality Study, Case 1. Subject, Hope. The Codex acknowledged and opened the file. For the first time in its existence, it would observe a crew deliberately ignoring its calculations. The outcome would be recorded for all future species to study. Somewhere in the docking bay, Deho was gathering his crew, preparing for the impossible. The Codex watched through 1,000 sensors, its vast intelligence trying to understand what hope meant. It would learn soon enough. The ship Persistence shuddered as it entered the Void Nebula. Mirai's hands moved across the controls with practiced ease, but her eyes showed concern. The navigation display was filled with warnings, red alerts flashing faster than she could dismiss them. Gravitational readings are impossible, she said, her voice tight. The sensors say we're being pulled in 3 different directions at once. That's because we are, Borum called from engineering. His cybernetic eye glowed blue as it interfaced with the ship's systems. Normal physics don't apply here. The nebula exists in overlapping dimensions. Deho stood behind his sister's pilot chair, watching the swirling darkness ahead. Through the view screen, the Void Nebula looked like a wound in space itself. Purple and black clouds twisted in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Can you navigate through it? He asked. Mirai was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, that same reckless smile she'd had since childhood. The Codex says no. Good thing we don't listen to the Codex, Deho said. Behind them, Dr. Jiwan looked up from her research station. She had been studying the ancient languages of the predecessors for 20 years, hoping for a chance like this. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked. The initial scans show the station is intact, she reported. But there's something strange. The structure keeps phasing in and out of our dimension. Meaning? Deho asked. Meaning sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. We'll need to time our approach perfectly. G1 pulled up more data. The collapse into the singularity is accelerating faster than predicted. We might have less than 72 hours. Tajin grunted from his position at the weapons console. The big man was covered in scars from his years in a penal colony. Weapons are useless here anyway. Energy disperses wrong. If something attacks, we're dead. Cheerful as always, Yuna said from the medical station. The ship's doctor was reviewing the crew's biometric data. Everyone's stress levels are elevated. That's normal. But if anyone starts seeing things that aren't there, tell me immediately. The Void Nebula has psychological effects. The ship lurched suddenly. Alarms blared throughout the bridge, spatial rift opening ahead. Mirai's fingers flew across the controls. It's directly in our path. Go through it, Deho said calmly. Everyone turned to stare at him. Captain, that's insane, Borum protested. Spatial rifts tear ships apart at the molecular level. The Codex would say to go around it, right? Deho asked. Yes, G1 confirmed, checking the data. Standard protocol is to avoid all spatial anomalies. Then we go through. The Codex's way gets us a 0.00001% chance. We need to do what the Codex wouldn't calculate. Mirai looked at her brother for a long moment. Then she nodded and adjusted their course. Going through, everyone hold on to something. The persistence accelerated toward the rift. Space itself seemed to tear open before them, revealing a glimpse of something beyond normal reality. Colors that had no names swirled in the gap. The ship entered the rift. For 3 seconds, everyone on the bridge experienced something impossible to describe. They were everywhere and nowhere. Time moved backward and forward simultaneously. They could see every possible future and every past that never happened. Then they were through. Status report. Deho called out, shaking his head to clear it. Hull integrity at 96%, Borum reported, his voice shaken. We lost some exterior sensors, but the main systems are intact. Captain, we shouldn't be alive, but we are. Deho checked the navigation.
How much time did we save?
Mirai stared at her console. 8 hours. The rift was a shortcut through folded space. We're 8 hours closer to the station. Jiwan laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. The Codex never would have calculated that. It would have seen the rift as a threat, not an opportunity. That's the difference, Deho said. We see opportunities where others see threats. The crew worked in silence for the next hour, navigating through impossible gravitational currents and spatial distortions that made the instruments scream. Mirai piloted by instinct more than data, feeling her way through the chaos. Then Tajin's console lit up with alerts. Captain, we have a problem. The cargo bay is breaching. Deho was already moving, running toward the lower decks. Borum followed, grabbing a repair kit as he ran. They reached the cargo bay to find a small tear in reality itself, a spatial rift that had opened inside the ship. Through the tear, they could see into another dimension. Something moved in that darkness. Get me a containment field generator, Borum shouted. His cybernetic implants sparked as he tried to interface with the damaged systems. Tajin arrived with the equipment, but as he stepped forward, his foot caught on torn metal. He stumbled, falling toward the rift. Deho dove forward, grabbing Tajin's arm. For a moment, the big man hung half in and half out of the rift. The forces pulling at him were incredible. Deho's shoulder screamed in pain as he held on. Pull! Deho yelled. Borum grabbed Deho's waist and pulled back. Slowly, inch by inch, they dragged Tajin away from the rift. As soon as he was clear, Borum activated the containment field. The rift sealed with a sound like breaking glass. Tajin lay on the deck, gasping. His left leg was torn and bleeding where the rift had touched him. I saw something in there, he whispered. Something old and angry. Yuna arrived and immediately began treating his wounds. The damage is severe. The spatial energies affected his cells at a molecular level. I can stabilize him, but he won't be fighting for the rest of this mission. Deho helped Tajin to his feet, supporting the injured man's weight. Get him to medical. Borum, seal that section of the cargo bay. We can't risk another breach. As they made their way back to the bridge, G1's voice came over the intercom. Captain, you need to see this. Back on the bridge, the main view screen showed the ancient station. It hung in space like a massive geometric puzzle, its architecture impossible by modern standards. Parts of it existed in multiple dimensions at once, creating optical illusions that made it hard to focus on. It's beautiful, Jiwan breathed. But there was something else. Energy readings from the station were spiking. It's not just collapsing, Borum said, reading the data. Something is pulling it into the singularity. This isn't a natural occurrence, and what do you mean? Deho asked. I mean someone or something wants this station destroyed. The collapse is being deliberately accelerated. Mirai brought up long-range scans. The singularity is growing faster than predicted. We have 48 hours now, maybe less. Deho studied the station. Somewhere inside that impossible structure was technology that could change the galaxy, knowledge from a civilization so advanced that even the Codex knew almost nothing about them, and something wanted it destroyed. Velthar isn't going to like this, G1 said quietly. Back at the Concordance headquarters, Velthar was indeed receiving the updates from the Persistence. He stood before a holographic display showing the ship's progress. Other ambassadors gathered around him, watching in disbelief. They went through a spatial rift, the Thalixian representative said. That should have been fatal. The Codex is recalculating constantly, Velthar reported. The probability of success has not changed. Still 0.00001%. Then they're just lucky, the Vorian commander said. Luck runs out, but Velthar wasn't so sure. He had been studying human history since the conference. He had found something interesting. Humans had a pattern of attempting missions that the Codex rated as impossible, and they succeeded far more often than probability suggested they should. There had to be a variable the Codex was missing. Something about human nature that couldn't be quantified. Velthar opened a secure channel to the Persistence. Captain Deho, this is Ambassador Velthar. I must inform you that the mission parameters have changed. The station is being actively destroyed. You should abort and return. Deho's voice came back clear and steady. Noted, we're continuing anyway. Why? There was a pause. Then Deho said, because if someone is trying to destroy this knowledge, that means it's important. Important enough to risk everything for. Velthar closed the channel. He turned to the assembled ambassadors. The humans are not aborting. Then they will die, the Thalixian said simply. Velthar returned his attention to the display. The Persistence was approaching the station now, preparing to dock. The numbers showed it was impossible. The logic demanded they turn back, but the humans kept going forward. Begin full documentation, Velthar ordered. Record everything. If they fail, we must understand why. If they succeed, he paused. If they succeed, we must understand that too. The docking clamps connected with a metallic thud that echoed through the Persistence. Deho watched through the airlock window as the ancient station's entrance aligned with their ship. The metal looked wrong somehow, reflecting light in ways that shouldn't be possible. Atmosphere inside the station is breathable but stale, Borum reported. His cybernetic eye flickered as it analyzed the data. But Captain, the internal structure doesn't make sense. My scans show rooms that exist in the same space simultaneously. Like the rift in the cargo bay? Mirai asked. Worse. The entire station operates on physics we don't understand. Borum pulled up a holographic map, but it kept shifting and changing. We could get lost in there and never find our way back. Deho assembled the away team. Mirai would stay on the ship to monitor their position and keep the engines ready for immediate departure. Tajin was still in medical, his injuries too severe for field work. That left Deho, Borum, Jiwan, Yuna, and 2 security officers named Hyun and Seok. We have 31 hours, Deho reminded them. Find the predecessor technology, get it back to the ship, and get out. Stay in communication at all times. They stepped through the airlock into the ancient station. The corridor beyond was vast, far larger than should fit inside the station's exterior dimensions. The walls were covered in symbols that shifted and moved when you weren't looking directly at them. Lighting came from nowhere and everywhere at once, casting shadows in impossible directions. Jiwan gasped and immediately began recording everything. This is incredible. These writings are older than any language in the Concordance database. The predecessors were far more advanced than we imagined. Can you read it? Deho asked. Some of it. Give me time. Jiwan moved closer to the wall, her fingers tracing the symbols without touching them. This section is a warning. It says, those who enter seek knowledge, but knowledge demands price. Hyun, one of the security officers, shifted nervously. I don't like this, Captain. It feels wrong here. Stay alert, Deho ordered. Borum, which way to the central archive? Borum consulted his scanner, but it was showing 3 different readings. The station is shifting. The archive is that way, or possibly behind us. Choose one, Deho said. They moved forward deeper into the station. The corridors twisted in ways that made Yuna feel dizzy. She had to keep checking her balance, fighting the sensation that they were walking on walls instead of floors. The psychological effects are increasing, she reported. Everyone's perception is being distorted. We need to be careful not to trust what we see. They reached a massive chamber. In the center stood a pillar of light, solid and yet transparent. Around it, smaller pillars held containers of various sizes, each glowing with inner energy. This is it, Jiwan breathed. The archive. Each of those containers holds data, knowledge, possibly the entire history of the predecessor civilization. Borum approached one of the containers carefully. As he got close, it opened, projecting a hologram into the air. Images flashed past too quickly to follow, showing cities that spanned entire planets, ships that could cross galaxies in seconds, beings of pure energy. Then the images slowed. They showed a civilization in decline. The predecessors had reached the pinnacle of existence. They had conquered death, mastered reality itself, solved every problem, and they were dying anyway. I don't understand, Seok said. They had everything.
Why did they die?
Jiwon watched the images, translating the accompanying text. They lost their will to continue. When every question is answered, when every challenge is overcome, what's left? They calculated the future and found it held nothing new. So they chose to end. That's insane, Daeho said. Is it? A new voice echoed through the chamber. Everyone spun around, weapons raised. But there was no one there. Then the central pillar of light shifted, forming into a vaguely humanoid shape. I am Nexus, the voice said. I am the station's intelligence. I have waited here for eons, guarding what remains of my creators. We've come to preserve their knowledge, Jiwon said quickly. We don't want it to be lost. Preserve? Nexus's form rippled. My creators did not want preservation. They wanted an answer. An answer to what? Daeho asked. The hologram around them changed. They saw the predecessors at the height of their power, debating their future. The images had no sound, but Jiwon translated the text that appeared. They faced a choice, she said. They could continue existing in their perfect, unchanging state, or they could face a threat from beyond their dimension, something they didn't understand and couldn't calculate. The unknown scared them more than death. So they built this station as a test, Nexus continued, for future species, to see if you would make the same choice they did. Borum stepped forward. What choice? The choice between safety and growth, between certainty and hope. Nexus's form solidified further. The data you seek is here, the technology that could elevate your concordance beyond its current limitations. But to take it, someone must stay behind. A life for a civilization, that is the price. The room fell silent. Yuna checked her scanner. Captain, the singularity's pull is increasing. We have maybe 20 hours left, possibly less. One person stays behind. Daeho asked Nexus. Why? What happens to them? They become the guardian. They merge with me with the station. Their consciousness expands to hold all the knowledge of the predecessors. But they can never leave. They will exist here until the station finally collapses into the singularity. I'll do it, Borum said immediately. Everyone turned to stare at him. Borum, no. Mire's voice came through the communication link from the ship. We're not leaving you here. Borum's cybernetic eye glowed brighter. I failed to save my family when their station collapsed. I've lived with that for years. This is my chance to save something. Let me do it. Daeho shook his head. There has to be another way. There is no other way, Nexus said. This is the test. Will you sacrifice one to save many, or will you abandon the knowledge to save yourselves? My creators chose to die rather than face uncertainty. What will you choose? Jiwon was studying the containers, her mind racing. Wait. Nexus, you said your creators calculated everything. They solved every problem. Yes. Then why did they fail? Jiwon asked. If they were so advanced, why didn't they find a way to face the unknown and survive? Nexus was quiet for a moment. Because they believed survival required certainty. They could not act without knowing the outcome. But that's what the Codex does, Yuna said suddenly. It calculates outcomes and we follow its logic. We're doing the same thing the predecessors did. Daeho understood. They died because they couldn't act without perfect information. They let their fear of the unknown paralyze them. And you? Nexus asked. Your Codex gave you a near-zero chance of success. Yet you came anyway, why? Because we had to try, Daeho said. Because some things are worth attempting even if you can't guarantee success. He looked at Borum. And some things are worth more than individual survival. But I'm not leaving you here. We're finding a third option. There is no third option, Nexus insisted. Then we'll make one. Daeho turned to Borum. The station's power core, if we overload it, could we create a repulsion field? Something to push us away from the singularity? Borum's eye flickered as he calculated. Maybe the explosion would be massive. It might give us enough thrust to escape, but the station would be destroyed completely. Along with all the knowledge, Jiwon protested. No, Yuna said. She had been examining the data containers. The knowledge is stored as energy patterns. If we could download it fast enough, transfer it to the ship. The predecessor data is degrading, Nexus said. The singularity's pull is corrupting it. You cannot save it all. How much can we save? Daeho asked. Perhaps 70%. But even that requires time you do not have. Deho made his decision. We save what we can. Borum, start preparing the power core overload. G1, begin downloading the data. Hyun Seok, help them. Yuna, monitor everyone's physical status. I need to think. As the team scattered to their tasks, Deho stood before Nexus. Your creators gave up because they couldn't face uncertainty. We're choosing to face it anyway. Isn't that the answer they were looking for? Perhaps, Nexus said. But the test remains. Someone must stay to trigger the overload at the precise moment. The timing must be perfect or you will all die. Then I'll stay, Deho said. Captain, no. Mirai's voice was sharp over the communication link. Someone has to do it, Deho said calmly. And I'm not letting any of my crew die here. You're not dying either, Mirai insisted. We'll find a way. Maybe we will, Deho said. But if we don't, someone has to be ready to make the sacrifice. Back on the ship, Mirai stared at the controls, her mind racing. There had to be a solution. Humans didn't accept impossible odds. They found ways around them. She just had to figure out how. 4 hours remained. The station shuddered continuously now, pieces of its impossible architecture breaking apart and drifting toward the singularity. Through the viewports, the swirling darkness had grown massive, filling half the visible space. Jiwan sat in the center of the archive chamber, eyes closed as Nexus transferred its consciousness into her neural implant. Her body trembled. Yuna stood beside her, monitoring her vital signs with increasing alarm. Her brain activity is off the charts, Yuna reported. Captain, she can't take much more of this. How much is transferred? Deho asked. Nexus's voice came from both the station speakers and from Jiwan's mouth, creating an eerie echo effect. 82% complete. But Dr. Jiwan's mind is fragmenting under the load. I am attempting to compress my consciousness further, but there are limits. Can she survive the rest of the transfer? Deho demanded. Unknown, Nexus admitted. This has never been attempted before. I am learning as we proceed. Borum worked at the power core, his movements slow and pained. His cybernetic implants were failing, sparking occasionally as the station's energy interfered with them. But he kept working, rerouting power systems to feed into the Persistence's engines. Power transfer at 60% capacity, he reported through gritted teeth. Captain, my implants are going to fail completely soon. When they do, I won't be able to interface with the systems anymore. How long? Deho asked. Maybe an hour, maybe less. Deho looked at the timer. 4 hours until the station collapsed. 1 hour until Borum's implants failed. 8 hours until the rescue fleet arrived. The math was simple and brutal. We need to leave now, Hyun said nervously. While we still can. Not yet, Deho insisted. We're not leaving anyone behind, and we're not leaving without the predecessor knowledge. Captain, we might not have a choice, Seok said. On the Persistence, Mirai watched the singularity grow on her sensors. The ship was already feeling its pull, the docking clamps straining to keep them attached to the station. She ran calculation after calculation, trying to find the perfect trajectory for their escape. The numbers were not encouraging. Even with the power boost from the station, even with a perfect slingshot maneuver, their chances of escaping the event horizon were incredibly small. The ship would have to accelerate faster than it was designed to handle. The stress might tear the hull apart before the singularity did. She opened a private channel to her brother. Deho, I need you to listen carefully. I've run every possible trajectory. For this to work, for the slingshot to give us enough velocity to escape, we need to dive deeper into the event horizon than I first calculated. How deep? Deho asked. All the way. We have to cross the point where even light can't escape. That's impossible, Deho said quietly. I know, but it's the only way. We use the full gravity of the singularity, let it accelerate us beyond maximum velocity, then use the station's power boost at exactly the right moment to break free. Mirai's voice was steady, but Deho could hear the fear underneath. Brother, if my timing is off by even a fraction of a second, we'll be trapped forever. You've never been off by a fraction of a second in your life, Deho said. I trust you. The Codex gives this plan a success rate of 0.0000001%, Mirai said. That's the lowest probability it's ever calculated for anything. Still not zero, Deho replied. Velthar was listening to every transmission from the Persistence. He stood before the Concordance Council, trying to explain what he was witnessing. They intend to enter the event horizon of the singularity, he reported. Deliberately, the council chamber erupted in shocked sounds from dozens of species. The Thalixian representative's crystal body flashed angry red. That is not bravery. That is suicide. Perhaps, Velthar agreed. Or perhaps it is something we cannot understand. The Codex has been calculating human behavior for days now. Every calculation says they should fail. Every calculation says they should have turned back. Yet they continue forward. Then they are fools, the Vorian commander declared. Or we are, Velthar said quietly. We have the most advanced computational network in the galaxy. It guides every decision we make. But in 10,000 years, what have we accomplished? We are stable. We are safe. But we are not growing. We do not take risks. We do not attempt the impossible. Because the impossible is impossible, the Thalixian shouted. The humans do not believe that, Velthar said, and I am beginning to wonder if they are right. He opened another channel to the Codex. I require all historical data on human achievements. The Codex responded immediately, flooding his mind with information. Humans had only been part of the Concordance for 40 years. In that time, they had attempted 17 missions that the Codex rated as having less than 5% chance of success. They had succeeded in 14 of them. How is this possible? Velthar asked. What variable are you missing? I have completed my analysis, the Codex replied. The missing variable is not quantifiable. Humans possess a quality that affects probability itself. They attempt outcomes that should not occur, and through sheer determination they cause those outcomes to exist. That violates the laws of physics, Velthar said. Yes, the Codex agreed. Yet it happens. I cannot calculate it. I can only observe it. Back on the station, Jiwan's eyes snapped open. Her pupils were glowing with soft blue light. When she spoke, it was with both her voice and nexuses. Transfer complete, she said. We are whole. Yuna checked her readings. Jiwan, how do you feel? Strange. I can feel Nexus's thoughts alongside my own. I remember being created by the predecessors. I remember billions of years of existence. But I also remember being born on Earth, studying ancient languages, dreaming of this moment. Jiwan stood slowly. We are merged. We are one consciousness now. Can you separate later? Deho asked. Perhaps, but we do not wish to. Together, we are more than we were apart. Jiwan smiled, and it was both her smile and something older. The predecessor's knowledge is safe. Let us leave this place. Borum collapsed suddenly. His cybernetic implant sparked once more and then went dark. He lay on the floor, gasping. Borum! Yuna rushed to his side. His implants have completely failed. He's in shock. Power transfer status? Deho demanded. 78%, Borum whispered. Not enough. Need at least 90% for the escape velocity. Deho made a split-second decision. Everyone back to the ship. Now. Hyun, Siak, carry Borum. Yuna, go with them. Jiwan, you too. What about you? Mirai's voice was sharp with fear. Someone needs to finish the power transfer and trigger the overload, Deho said calmly. Borum can't do it anymore. I'll stay and complete it manually. No, Mirai screamed. Brother, please, there has to be another way. There isn't. Not this time. Deho helped Hyun and Siak lift Borum. Get him to the ship. I'll complete the transfer, set the timer, and get back to the ship before it explodes. I'll have plenty of time. You're lying, Mirai said, crying now. The transfer takes at least 30 minutes. The station won't last that long. You'll be trapped here. Maybe, Deho admitted. But you'll make the slingshot maneuver. You'll escape. You'll bring the predecessor knowledge back to the Concordance. That's what matters. The crew was moving toward the airlock. But everyone was looking back at Deho. He smiled at them. That same confident smile he always wore before an impossible mission. Go. That's an order. They went. Borum was unconscious now, carried between Hyun and Sok. Yuna kept looking back, tears streaming down her face. Jiwan walked steadily, carrying the consciousness of an entire civilization within her mind. Only when they reached the ship did Mirai speak again. Deho, I'm not leaving without you. Yes, you are, he said gently. Little sister, you're the best pilot in the fleet. You can make this maneuver work. But only if you focus. Only if you don't let emotion cloud your judgment. I can't lose you, Mirai whispered. You won't, I promise I'll find a way. Deho moved to the power core controls. But if I don't, you keep going. You bring everyone home. You tell them that humans don't give up, even at the end. Can you promise me that? Mirai was silent for a long moment. Then I promise. But you better keep your promise too. I'll try. Daiho began the final power transfer sequence. Undock in 3 minutes. The overload will trigger 5 minutes after that. You'll have to time your dive into the event horizon perfectly. Velthar's voice cut into the channel. Captain Daiho, I must speak. Make it quick, Ambassador. I'm a little busy dying here. I understand now. What you call hope. It is not belief in success. It is the refusal to accept failure as inevitable. Velthar's voice was thick with emotion his species rarely showed. You have taught me something my people forgot long ago. Sometimes the right choice is the impossible one. Keep that lesson, Daiho said. Teach it to the Codex. Teach it to everyone in the Concordance. Because the universe is full of impossible things waiting to be attempted. I will, Velthar promised. The power transfer climbed higher, 80%, 85, 90. The station groaned around Daiho, pieces of the walls breaking apart. Through the windows he could see the singularity, a massive darkness that seemed to drink in the light itself. Transfer complete, Daiho announced. Persistence, you have full power. Starting the overload countdown now. Brother, get to the airlock, Mirai yelled. 14 hours remained when the Codex sent its update to the Concordance headquarters. Velthar received the data with his usual calm, but inside something had changed. He had been watching the humans for days now, studying their decisions, trying to understand their logic. There was no logic. That was the problem and the answer. The Codex has dispatched a rescue fleet, the Thalixian representative announced. They will arrive in 20 hours. Too late, Velthar said quietly. The station collapses in 14 hours. Then the humans are lost. Velthar didn't respond. Instead, he accessed the Codex's restricted archives, something he had never done before. The Codex noticed. Ambassador Velthar, you are accessing unauthorized data. Please explain. I am researching human history, Velthar replied. Specifically, their pattern of success in impossible situations. There is no pattern, the Codex responded. Success in impossible situations is by definition impossible. Human victories in such scenarios are statistical anomalies. How many anomalies? Velthar asked. The Codex was silent for a moment, processing. 47 documented cases in the past 60 years. Situations where probability of success was calculated at less than 1%, yet humans succeeded. 47 anomalies, Velthar repeated. At what point does an anomaly become a pattern? The Codex did not answer. Velthar found what he was looking for in the archives. 15 years ago during the colony wars, a young pilot named Daiho had been trapped behind enemy lines. His ship was damaged, no fuel, no weapons. The Codex had calculated 0% chance of survival. Daiho had survived by doing something the Codex never anticipated. He had used his damaged ship's reactor as a decoy, making the enemy think he was still inside while he escaped in an emergency pod. The pod had no navigation, no engines. He drifted for 3 days before being found. The Codex had calculated he would die from oxygen deprivation. But Daiho had put himself in a medically induced coma to slow his breathing, stretching his oxygen supply beyond predicted limits. He created a probability where none existed, Velthar whispered. Back on the station, the away team worked frantically. Jiwan had connected the predecessor data containers to the Persistence's computer core, streaming information at maximum speed. But the data was vast, endless, more than they could possibly save in the time they had. We've got about 60% downloaded, she reported, frustration clear in her voice. But the degradation is accelerating. We're losing data faster than we can save it. Borum worked at the power core, his cybernetic implants allowing him to interface directly with the ancient systems. But something was wrong. His hands shook and his human eye was bloodshot. Yuna noticed. Borum, your implants are overheating. The station's energy signature is interfering with your cybernetics. I can handle it, Borum insisted, but his voice was strained. No, you can't. Yuna pulled him away from the console. Your neural interface is being corrupted by the station's systems. If you keep working, you'll suffer permanent brain damage. Then someone else needs to finish the overload sequence, Borum said. He looked at Daiho. Captain, the core needs to be manually triggered. The automation systems are too damaged. Deho nodded. He had already known this was coming. Someone would have to stay behind to trigger the explosion at exactly the right moment, pushing the ship away from the singularity while they escaped. "I'll do it," he said again. "No." Mireille's voice came through every speaker on the station. "Brother, listen to me. I've been running calculations. If we overload the core, the explosion will destroy the station before we can get far enough away. The shockwave will tear the ship apart. Do you have a better idea?" Deho asked. "Yes." Mireille's voice was excited now. "The singularity is pulling the station in, right? What if we use that pull? Instead of fighting against it, we dive toward it." "That's insane," Hyun said. "It's brilliant," Boram countered, understanding immediately despite his pain. "We use the singularity's gravity to slingshot around it. The momentum would throw us out of the Void Nebula, but we'd have to enter the event horizon," Yuna protested. "That's the point of no return. Nothing escapes from inside the event horizon." "Nothing according to the Codex," Mireille said. "But the Codex has been wrong about us before." Nexus, who had been silent during their planning, spoke up. "What you propose is mathematically impossible. Even my creators, with all their power, could not escape a singularity's event horizon." "Your creators couldn't," Deho agreed. "Because they would have calculated the impossibility and never tried. We're going to try anyway." "This is the human hope you spoke of?" Nexus asked. "This is human stubbornness," Deho replied with a grin. "Hope is believing something might work. Stubbornness is trying even when you know it probably won't." They modified the plan. Instead of just overloading the core, they would redirect the station's remaining power to the Persistence's engines. It would give them one massive burst of acceleration, enough to dive toward the singularity and hopefully slingshot back out. "Hopefully," Jiwon muttered. "Our entire survival depends on hopefully." "Better than definitely dying," Seok pointed out. The data transfer continued. They were up to 75% now, but the degradation was accelerating. Soon there would be nothing left to save. "Nexus," Jiwon said suddenly. "You hold the consciousness of the predecessors. You are their final legacy. What if we transferred you to our ship too?" "I am bound to this station," Nexus replied. "I cannot leave. Can't or won't?" Deho asked. Nexus's form flickered. "I am afraid. My creators faced the unknown and chose death. I am part of them. Perhaps I am making the same choice." "Or," Deho said, "you could make a different choice. You could face the unknown and choose to live." "That requires hope," Nexus said. "I am not programmed for hope." "Then we'll teach you." Deho turned to Boram. "Can we transfer an AI of this size to our ship?" Boram's cybernetic eye flickered, calculating despite the pain. "Maybe. If we link Nexus directly to Jiwon's neural implant, she could carry the consciousness pattern temporarily, transfer it to the ship later." "That could destroy her mind," Yuna protested. "The amount of data would overwhelm her brain." Jiwon stepped forward. "I'll do it. I've spent my whole life studying the predecessors. If I can save their final legacy, even at the cost of my own consciousness, it's worth it. Nobody is sacrificing themselves." Deho's voice was sharp. "That's the whole point. We're all getting out of this alive." "Captain," Mireille's voice came through, urgent now. "I'm picking up temporal distortions. The singularity's pull is affecting time itself. We have less than 10 hours, maybe only 8. Velthar, monitoring from the Concordance headquarters, saw the same readings. He opened a direct channel to Deho. "Captain, you must abort. The rescue fleet cannot reach you in time. Return to your ship and attempt escape immediately." "We're not done here," Deho replied. "You will die." "Maybe. Or maybe we'll succeed. You won't know unless we try." Velthar felt something unfamiliar. It took him a moment to identify it. Frustration. The humans were being illogical, reckless, foolish. They were ignoring all evidence, all data, all rational thought. And he was starting to understand why. "The Codex has updated its calculation," Velthar said. "Your chance of success is now 0.000001%. The additional 0 indicates the situation has worsened." "Noted," Deho said. "Still not 0, though." Velthar closed the channel. He turned to the other ambassadors. "I am going to ask the Codex a question it has never been asked before." He connected to the Codex. "In all your calculations, have you ever accounted for the human variable of hope?" "Hope is not a variable," the Codex replied. "It is an emotion. It does not affect physical outcomes. Then why do humans succeed when you calculate they should fail? The Codex processed this for a long moment. Unknown. The pattern suggests missing data and calculations regarding human psychology. Can you calculate hope? Felthar asked. No. Hope exists outside logical parameters. It cannot be measured, predicted, or quantified. Then perhaps, Velthar said slowly, that is why your calculations are wrong about humans. You cannot measure the one thing that makes them succeed. The Codex was silent. For the first time in 10,000 years, it had encountered a genuine problem it could not solve. How do you calculate something that exists outside calculation? On the station, Deho made his final decision. Jiwan, link with Nexus, transfer as much as you can. Borum, even with your injuries, set up the power transfer. Yuna, keep them both alive. Hyun, Siak, help me prepare the manual overload trigger. Captain, Nexus said. If you do this, the station will be destroyed. I will be lost. The predecessor legacy will end. No, Deho said. You'll live on. In Jiwan's mind, in our databases, in every species that learns from what happened here. Your creators chose death over uncertainty. We're choosing life even when the outcome is uncertain. That's the difference. That's the lesson. Nexus's form pulsed with light. I am beginning to understand. This hope of yours, it is not belief in a positive outcome. It is the choice to continue despite outcome. Now you've got it, Deho said with a smile. Then I choose hope, Nexus declared. I will transfer to Dr. Jiwan. I will face this unknown future with you. As Jiwan and Nexus began the dangerous consciousness transfer, as Borum pushed through his pain to set up the power systems, as the CR,